And this is the 4th annual Conversation in Concert. This idea was born out of an idea with 4 people meeting together, and now it has evolved into a major 3-day weekend at the birthplace of jazz in the great city of New Orleans. I'm Jason Hughes. I am the Senior Vice President and Chief of Staff of the African Diaspora Consortium. I also have the honor of serving as a member of the Louisiana House of Representatives. It is my honor to welcome each of you to this extraordinary celebration. This year's theme, Connecting Lives and Uplifting Communities Globally through the intersection of history, education, and the arts. It is only appropriate that we are in the lower 9th Ward at the home of the Ellis Marsalis Center. So significant. Ladies and gentlemen, next year we will commemorate the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. Not far from here, the levees breached and wiped out this remarkable community. Many know it as the lower 9th Ward, but to those of us that were born and raised here, to those of us across the country that are very familiar with the African Diaspora Consortium, the lower 9th Ward is more than just a neighborhood in the city of New Orleans. It is a beacon of Black excellence. It is a beacon of Black home ownership. And ladies and gentlemen, it is a beacon of resilience because almost 2 decades ago, many people said that the lower 9th Ward could not, would not, and there was no viable path for it to recover and come back. In fact, there was a plan to turn this beautiful community that produced folks like Fats Domino and so many of our great culture bearers. They wanted to make this great community green space. But our people, as they so often do, banded together and said, no, thank you. We will ensure that the lower 9th Ward lives on. And so today, it is our honor to celebrate the 10th anniversary in this beacon of resilience, which we call the lower 9th Ward, in this namesake, one of the great families of New Orleans, one of our world-renowned jazz musicians, a great mentor to so many of our culture bearers and jazz musicians, the late but forever great Ellis Marsalis. Before we get into the heart of our program tonight, I just want to highlight and honor and acknowledge a few individuals. When the African Diaspora Consortium was being planned, it was an idea by a remarkable leader in this country. Many of us, when she came to us and said, I have a great idea to start not just a local nonprofit, she said, I want it to be a global nonprofit, but I have no money to offer you, but I need to lean on you to help me make this happen. And we did. We made many trips to Washington, D.C. and to New York, to philanthropists throughout the city of New Orleans and the Gulf South. And because of her visionary leadership, the African Diaspora Consortium thrives today. She has made history in her own right, leading the nation's only historically Black college system as the 2nd woman president of that system. But she's also a first. She's the first African-American woman to earn a PhD in education from Emory University. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to acknowledge and introduce and highlight the president and CEO of the African Diaspora Consortium, Dr. Kassie Freeman. Dr. Freeman. Dr. Freeman, we are forever grateful for your leadership, for ensuring that not only adults, but particularly our students are exposed to the African diaspora and that it forever lives on, and we are forever grateful to you. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have several of the ADC board members in attendance today. It is my honor to acknowledge the chair of the African Diaspora Consortium Board of Directors, former premier head of government of the British Territory of Bermuda, the Honorable Paula Cox, chair of our board. Oftentimes you hear programs and buildings named after individuals, and they have gone on from this remarkable place and are looking at us from above. Our Student Study Abroad Exchange Program is named after a phenomenal gentleman, Dr. Michael Nettles, and he is here with us today, Vice Chair of the ADC Board of Directors. Dr. Charles Nash, who, many folks thought Dr. Fauci was the face of COVID-19, and he was. But there were so many talented individuals working tirelessly, working behind the scenes. And one thing we know about COVID, Black populations globally, but particularly in the United States of America, were dying at a very alarming rate. At one point, the city of New Orleans had the highest death rate per capita in the world. But we had extraordinary leaders and experts working behind the scenes to eradicate COVID-19 and ensure that we had the requisite and relevant research and vaccines. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to also acknowledge one of our ADC board members from Tuskegee University and Alabama, Dr. Charles Nash. And then certainly nothing happens without the extraordinary staff of this organization. And so several of our senior staff members are here tonight. You will hear from two of them on the panel, but I would like to recognize two of our senior vice presidents, Attorney Conan Louis and Dr. Kim Archberg. Thank you very much for your leadership. Nothing happens without strategic partnerships, and I certainly want to highlight our sponsors that made this happen tonight: the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation, the New Orleans Tourism and Cultural Fund, and our major sponsor and longtime partner that has invested in the African Diaspora Consortium, the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Certainly give them a hand for their financial support. And last but certainly not least, the College Board has been just a great partner. We have many educators from not only around the country here tonight, but from several countries. And the College Board has been a long-time partner, ensuring that our teachers have the proper training so that we can properly invest in our students to learn about the African Diaspora Consortium. Here tonight from the College Board is Ms. Bianca Perth. So thank you all. At this time, I have the extraordinary honor of introducing our panel tonight. I am so excited to introduce these very talented individuals. The moderator for tonight's conversation is Mr. Jamaal Finkley. He is the founder and executive producer of BlackTree TV, a pioneering media network that has amassed over 1 billion video views worldwide. With more than 25 years of experience in media, Jamaal has become a leading figure in urban entertainment, producing content for major events like the Academy Awards and the Grammy Awards. His visionary leadership has extended the reach of BlackTree TV across 17 platforms, showcasing stories that reflect the vibrancy of urban culture. He is also a member of the ADC Board of Directors. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming tonight's moderator, Mr. Jamaal Finkley. Our first panelist tonight is an extraordinary leader and a daughter of New Orleans. She focuses on the challenges and ideology of individualism by examining inequalities and resulting degradation as the result of our color-based prejudices. She argues the belief in individualism allows Americans to turn a blind eye to inequality, suggesting barriers to well-being lie with the individual and not also within our social structures, in spite of documentation of collective experiences of these groups and data on outcomes and disfavored groups. She is an extraordinary visual artist, but she's also an extraordinary mother, the mother of twins, 8-year-old twins, and that is certainly a title that she is extremely proud of. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome one of our visual artists and senior advisors to ADC, the extraordinary Katrina Andry. Our next panelist is also a senior advisor to the African Diaspora Consortium. He is a native son, proud son of this great city. His father is the namesake of this phenomenal institution. He is an acclaimed trombonist, producer, and educator. Delfeayo Marsalis has been praised for his technical excellence, inventive mind, and frequent touches of humor. He definitely has a great sense of humor. And heralded and hailed as one of the best, most imaginative, and musical trombonists of his generation. In addition to leading his own small groups in the dynamic Uptown Jazz Orchestra over the years, Delfeayo has performed with music legends such as Ray Charles, Fats Domino, Art Blakey, and Elvin Jones. He has released 10 recordings as leader to critical acclaim and has steadily gained a reputation for being a merchant of joy. And he has no doubt brought a lot of joy to the ADC family, the city of New Orleans, our great country, but certainly our world. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my brother, Delfeayo Marsalis. Our last panelist, ladies and gentlemen, many of us feel like we have known her for years. In fact, I didn't know her real name until I got older. I thought it was Lucinda Merkel because I'm a big 227 fan. And that is where I was first introduced to her. Some of us just wanted to kick off our shoes and felt like we knew her because we really thought that she was the college classmate to Claire Huxtable of The Cosby Show. But she has made us so proud and she is so well-rounded. Miss CCH Pounder, award-winning actress. Currently, she can be seen in the Netflix film Rustin, the Max series Full Circle, the Netflix series Three Body Problem, Hulu's Black Cave, and in James Cameron's Avatar, The Wave of Water. She has many upcoming projects, but many of you thought her name was really Dr. Loretta Wade. In her starring role in the CBS series NCIS. Ms. Pounder has been recognized globally. She serves on the board of the African Millennium Foundation and was a founding member of Artists for a New South Africa. You have her bio in front of you, but I won't read it. But I will say she is our Wilma Rudolph's, our Michelle Obama's, our Janetta Cole's, our all wrapped into one. She is the epitome of the African diaspora, and we are so honored to welcome her here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, the legendary, extraordinary Miss CCH Pounder. And with that, I will hand it off to ADC board member and our extraordinary moderator for the evening, Mr. Jamaal Finkley.
Thank you, Jason. Before we even get started with these great panelists, I do want to echo some praise for our CEO, Dr. Kassie Freeman. I know we said that just 20 years since Katrina, but my Hurricane Kassie started 30 years ago when she came and visited my high school and recruited me to go to Vanderbilt University. And just this year, just this May 10th, 30 years after I started that journey, I went back and got that degree because I knew I owed that to Dr. Kassie Freeman. So I want to say that. I'm super grateful for you. You're a living angel. Thank you for being such a shining light for education. So let's get started. So all the great bios have been done by Jason. I'm not even going to try to go back and do what he's done, but I do want to start with the city of New Orleans. Since we're here and we're enjoying this great weekend and we've been able to have all these great panels and everything. My first question is for you, Ms. CCH Pounder. I know that you've had several seasons of NCIS here in New Orleans. I assume that you here probably. What is your connection to New Orleans? Could you just speak about how the city of New Orleans has embraced you and treated you, and how you've, felt working here?
No, it's a sweet question. Okay, so usually you have to have a relative to discover New Orleans, or you like jazz to discover New Orleans, or you've heard about the Mardi Gras. I came many years ago and did a film at Angola State Prison called If Tomorrow Comes. And that was maybe in 2008 or 9. And then a big jump to 2014. I was hired for NCIS New Orleans, in which you were obligated to move lock, stock, and barrel. And because NCIS was already existing, I think they knew that it had legs, and so we had to move. And therefore, I came to New Orleans because it was the only way I could get that job, right? But the thing about being embraced by New Orleans is what it affected me, how it affected me as an actor. In most of the states that pretend to be the place where you're not, so that, Seattle for New York, that kind of thing, New Orleans had this amazing way of, okay, we're going to shoot a scene. Oh my God, there's a train behind it. Do we have to wait? No, you don't, because that train is going to go on and on and on and on. So there was this wonderful feeling of the city itself created a character for itself, for us, and it made it really endearing to watch the river go by, to all these little things that counted. And then people would just sort of jump in and want to be in the movie, and they were street performers or they were painters. There were so many places to look at, so much color, that it was inevitable that we would all sort of fall under its spell, and it happened to me as well.
Delfeayo, we're here in a building that's named after your family. You're a namesake in the city. You represent generations. Again, we're speaking on coming up on 20 years since Katrina, and you've been riding it out the whole time. What has the city taught you about bouncing back from that great natural disaster, and what do you see for the future of this city going forward?
Well, many times I tell people I'm from New Orleans, I play music, and they say, New Orleans is the birthplace of jazz. And I say two things. I said, yeah, that was probably the last time people actually loved the music down here. And the second part is, just like jazz is a survival music, New Orleans is a survival city. So you can look back, and the critics have been saying since the 30s that jazz was done. And Coleman Hawkins ought to open up a rib shack. He'd be better off than trying to play the tenor saxophone. But what I think is the most endearing aspect of this city and about the music we call jazz is that it becomes what it needs to be in the moment. And that's what I would say I've learned the most. So I think back to Hurricane Katrina, and it's all like just one thing. It's not like a catastrophic thing happened, and how do you recover from the catastrophic event? It's more like, okay, what adjustments do we have to make to continue life's journey? And I think down here, the New Orleanians have done it fairly well for a long time, and will continue to do so.
Katrina, you're also a native here, and I mean, just like the music plays a part here, you walk around the streets and you see the influence of visual arts everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I know that you've made a career and got education in the arts. How much did this city play a part in that for you? And do you think you would have had the same trajectory in St. Louis or somewhere else?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of a believer that everybody is a product of their hometown. There's really no escaping. You can leave, but there's no escaping the effect of the place that you grew up and the influences upon that place. They influence you, and they make you the person that you are, and they definitely made me the artist that I am. Even moving away and coming back, I felt, we talked about earlier that I moved to Florida and then I came back, and in Florida I kind of felt like an outsider, but I also felt like people really marveled that I was from New Orleans, and they really kind of dreamed up this place that is magical, that is lush, that is the northernmost Caribbean city, the southernmost Parisian city, and I just I didn't have a different experience, but because I hadn't lived anywhere else before, it was just the city that I knew. And so it wasn't until I moved away that I realized how much influence New Orleans had over me and over my artwork also. I mean, my artwork is about the collective Black experience. This is a majority Black city. I don't know if that would have happened in a city that wasn't majority Black. The stories that I tell and the stories that I hear and that I can tell and that I can feel a part of a larger community because a larger community exists here.
Great answer. CCH, I know we're talking about the diaspora of curriculum and this consortium and everything else, and more than anybody else, you with having started school in your native Guyana and going to boarding school in the United Kingdom, and then getting your BFA at Ithaca College in New York, you've literally done the diaspora of education. And I wonder, like, when you look back at those different experiences and how curriculum is taught in those different places, like, could you just reflect on that a little bit and give like a little bit of your personal journey through education in these different places?
Well, actually, now that I'm old enough to actually look back, what an extraordinary life my parents provided for me. They wanted a better standard of living, and they wanted me out of Guyana, even though my mother was a Guyana scholar, and my father, who would have been quite content, I think, to be a postman, a mailman, my mother dragged him to America, forced him to go to Cornell University, and which is why I didn't go there, by the way. I didn't want to, so I went to the one across the hill. But that kind of set us up for a standard of excellence that was required within my family. It was quite brutal in terms of how they saw you. When we used to literally say, my mother would do this, my lawyer, my doctor. She was really kind of a ruffian in terms of education, and it really meant a great deal to her. So to have the type of how did I even get to be an actor happened in England, a lonely childhood, a boarding school childhood, slightly isolated, fertile ground for the imagination. And that's pretty much how it came about for Shakespeare and music and opera and all the other things that were very normal bits of education in England, slightly different in America and definitely different in Guyana. And the only one moment in Guyana that I do remember that was so amazing to me was I saw Tea House of August Moon in the Kabuki style theater, just done with ribbons and what's that singular, that drum, the flat one, bum bum.
Snare.
Thank you. And just done with that, and yet I saw the sea. I saw the boats coming through the ribbons, the sea, and it held me for years. And then by the time I got to America, I think the thing that stood out the most was I had a sense of confidence that my colleagues in school, in college, were just beginning, and I definitely was already there. So that kind of hodgepodge education, in the end, turned out for me to be of great advantage. Yeah.
Katrina, sort of like the kids, this generation today that's dealing with going to school in the middle of a pandemic that interrupted it. I mean, you were able to finish your undergrad right before Hurricane Katrina, and then took some time off and then went back for graduate studies. How did that affect you continuing on with your education, the interruption of Katrina and moving away from Louisiana and coming back? Was that just part of the resilience? Did Katrina play any effect in you saying you wanted to do graduate studies, or like how do you think that played a part?
I'm not sure. I know that I wanted to get back to New Orleans, at least for a time, and that provided a way to come back during that time period. Being away, I missed it. I felt forced out because of the storm. It wasn't a move that I would have made if that event hadn't happened. And then I moved to a place where I didn't know anybody. So, you know, like Cece was saying, when you were in boarding school, that did provide fertile ground for the imagination. Mm-hmm. You know, I had a lot of time to think and make and just kind of understand myself better. And then when I had that time, I understood I wanted to come back to pursue a master's in printmaking. And what that was going to be about, I wasn't even sure when I went to grad school, like what was the point, like what was going to be the main purpose of me going back to grad school. Besides, I knew that I wanted to make artwork and see if I was around other people that were pursuing the same thing, if I could grow in this area. And it really did provide that for me. So I'm grateful for that, but at the same time, you know, you kind of like wish it didn't happen that way, but it happened that way anyway. So that's where I was at.
Definitely. I think you went to school at Berkeley Music, it's like in New England, right?
Boston.
In Boston, yeah. How leaving New Orleans, like New Orleans is such a part of you. Like, how did you reflect on being outside of the city and coming back when you went to school? Like, what was the effect of being on the outside looking in to New Orleans again?
It was kind of different because so Branford and Winton, of course, they're the oldest, and they had the opportunity, played in the funk band called the Creators. And then by the time Ellis and I were of age, my mom was just like, no, y'all aren't going, no, that's not what's going to happen. So we didn't have the same kinds of experiences as far as being part of, you know, the bands and the community, et cetera, et cetera. So it was mostly high school activities. And then I went away, and I somehow ended up at Berkeley College, which was totally unplanned. I really was going to go to Boston University, and I had a scholarship to go there. I was studying classical trombone. I didn't really have a good plan. I just said, it's something that I like to do, so I'm going to go do that. So senior year, I was in the McDonald's All-American band with a guy named Richard Holiday. So Richard Holiday says he wanted me to come and hang at his house with his parents and his family. My mom was really opposed to it. My mom was like, you don't even know these white folks. What, you going to stay at their house for? And I was like, come on, Mom, you know, this is like, I'm like, it's 1983, Mom, let's go. At the time, it did not occur to me that we were 15 years removed from the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And my mother's experiences, as pertains to race, were extremely different than mine. And a lot of times, she never really harped on what she went through. But as I think back to how guarded she was about this particular occasion, you know, because from where she was, you know, here I am in Boston, and they have their reputation. Mm-hmm. Who knows what's going to go on? At any rate, I did go, and it worked out pretty well. The last night, they kept saying, "What do you want to eat? What do you want to eat?" And I said, "Look, whatever y'all cook, I want to be the nice guest. Whatever you make is fine. I have no problem." So, sure enough, they had the fried chicken on the table, which was cool. I was cool with it. It was good too. But then the daughter was like 8 or 9 years old, and she's like, "Mom, this is delicious. We should have this more often." So they're all turning red and pink, and I'm just like, "Oh yes, ma'am, it's delicious." But the one thing that Holiday did do, which was a great thing, was he said, "Man, what are you going to Boston University for?" And I said, "Man, you know, I want to maybe play classical." He said, "You don't want to play that classical crap. said, you ought to come to Berkeley. So this is 2 weeks before school started. And I thought about it and said, oh yeah, Branford went to Berkeley. So I called Branford. I said, yeah, man, what do you think about me going to Berkeley? And he's like, yeah, my boys are still there. It's a good idea. So I showed up at Berkeley 2 weeks later, financial aid, and I met Sharon Bridges. And she's like, well, how are you going to pay for your education? And I'm like, it's financial aid. You're supposed to tell me. The finance department. And she just said, hold on. She went in the back. She said, this is going to go one of two ways. So she went in the back, and I guess some folks back there vouched for me. And between loans and scholarship, I was able to start at Berkeley. And I hung out until they kind of forced me to leave. I loved college. So then I came back here, and I realized that there were not a lot of musicians my age at that point, mid-late 20s, that were here playing on the music scene. Most of the guys, like we had Kermit Ruffins, we had the Rebirth, they were all in the brass band community. So it was a great opportunity for me to come down, and I played more of the modern jazz. And you know, we've been doing that ever since. Since that time, of course, we're bringing in the brass band. We got a lot of different things. Well, you're gonna hear that in a couple of minutes. So that's what I would say.
Well, you know, they say black don't crack. And the CCH Pounder started her career on screen 45 years ago with all that jazz in 1979. And I mean, still vibrant and beautiful. But I do want to talk to you about your legacy. I mean, we've seen so many great characters, from Claudette Wynn to Angela Hicks to Moat to the character you played in Rain, Miss Adams, I believe, so many years ago. There's just so many great characters that you've been able to embody on the screen. I wonder, as a woman of the diaspora, having Guyanese people at home, having people in London, having people all across, like your friend from Senegal here, have you felt any responsibility to all of these people and places that connect to you for different reasons, whether it's your homeland or where you've traveled or whatever else? Like, as a thespian, as an artist, is there like a sense of responsibility to those people for you?
I didn't think I did. Honestly, I didn't think I did. I felt I'm an actor, I play roles, they're ugly, fat, skinny, short, mean, you know, all that encompasses acting. And I think America made me very aware that the power of television is so insidious that you cannot just do it for the sake of it's my love. I was walking behind a father and son, and they recognized me as the woman who sold crack, sold her baby for crack in a Miami Vice episode. And the boy was so excited, he said, Dad, that's that lady. And he took him by the hand and he held him closer and he said, yeah, they're like that. And it was the first time I realized how powerful this particular instrument is, the television. And I went to my agent and I said, this is the last time I will ever play a woman less than. And he said, well, he said an interesting thing. He said, I haven't had to spend a dime to get you a job. You're always working, 45 years. And I said, yes, but you know, you're here to actually carve a career, to really create something. And I went to Hawaii with a girlfriend, sat on the beach, and I came back and I said, you're fired. And it was the first kind of sense of owning that it's not only for the diaspora and my country, etc., it's for me. And by it being for me, gives me the opportunity to give it to all of the countries that recognize me as their own, which are a lot. And so that's I think the one thing that I'm fiercely proud of, even though I'm now at the age where I'm once again going, why can't I play just anybody? And, you know, I think it's an actor's mantle to want to try all these different things. I'm very aware of how powerful television is, but the one thing that I'm aware of now is that there are other actors and stories to counteract anything that I would now consider doing that would be salacious, rude, unacceptable, because you're no longer just the one. And so you have this balance of, you know, she's trying something new. That's how different it is now, is that Cece's going to do something really crazy, not at all like what she did before. And I think people understand it now as an actor, as opposed to, yeah, that's what they're really like. And that's really important. So yes, I do kind of bear witness to what could be a disastrous choice.
I'm so
But
glad
isn't.
that there's been so many more roles now that
Yes.
it's not just the one role anymore. Katrina, as a visual artist, how do you think, I mean, you've worked on various projects, but how do you think visual arts can work to promote and preserve the culture of the African diaspora worldwide? Like, where does visual art play a role in that?
Well, I mean, I feel like visual art it's a language you're trying to teach somebody as they're taking in the information, right? So it's just more opportunity for people to be able to do that, that come from the African diaspora, that are of the African diaspora. You know, you look at every industry that we're all three in and how you feel boxed out. So just more voices offer more opportunity for community to be involved in it.
And this is kind of it's a selfish question because I'm into machine learning and AI, and for all three of your industries, AI is having an effect, and I wonder, like, if each of you could speak briefly on how it's affecting the music, the arts, and the screen for you as a career.
Well, you know, AI, I think it affects the music that I perform and compose less than, because it's more difficult. So of course, if you have scripts, then you can just feed the script in and say, write me a story like this, but with this as the main theme. Whereas with music, it's, you know, especially acoustic music, it's a little different. So if you're doing like pop music or rap, where you have the drum machines and everything is electronic, it's easier to manipulate. But it's difficult to say, you know, write like Charlie Parker, but modern and hip. It's like, well, Charlie Parker was already modern and hip, so much for that. So I would say at this point, I don't necessarily feel much of an impact one way or the other as far as, you know, the music goes. But I would imagine, you know, with the writing and the scripts, maybe you have a different experience.
Yeah, it's like a slow creeper for me, AI, because my first experience definitely was in Avatar, where every morning that you go to work, you give them a series of emotions, pain, sadness, happiness, etc., and you're feeding the machine, and you realize that you're halfway through, you kind of go, wait a minute, this is my bag of stuff. And you realize that you're giving it over. And it's kind of very seductive because it's a slow wave that's actually getting faster and faster now. But AI for me is how it affected me was I do remember Avatar again not being available. And they said, oh, never mind, we'll get it from the computer. And that's when I realized that probably I would be an obsolete case in a few years, decades perhaps. Doesn't matter, I'm at the tail end, but just to warn those up-and-comers that it's going to be different. Yeah.
And for me, I'm not sure, I don't know that there's a collector base collecting AI art. People still want a human touch in visual art that is created. While there are artists doing interesting things with AI, I'm not sure that AI is taking over visual art.
CCH, you're a curator of a museum, and you have I hear that you have an extensive art collection also. Can you speak a little bit about your connection to the diaspora through your visual arts that you've collected, promoted at your museum?
I just want to just tag on to that Katrina was the first person from New Orleans that I collected when I got here. So interesting that we're on the same panel. I ended up, by default, having a collection that is African diaspora focus, because my husband desperately wanted a museum of African art, and I was the miserable sod that said you cannot afford it, but perhaps you can afford contemporary African art, and that's how our collection started. And so we built the museum, we opened it, we ran it for 23 years. During his illness, he knew that he was going, and he willed the museum to the state of Senegal. So they have their first museum of contemporary art there. Yeah. But I think one of the things that I'm truly proud of was the art was considered. I went around as many countries as I could, bringing art back to Senegal, and it was basically what Mother Africa's seeds have scattered all over the world. This is what they've been doing. So I'd bring art in from Australia, from all the Caribbean, from America, so that they had a wonderful sort of polyglot, just a wonderful mix of things, visual things to take a look at. And I think it was very inspiring and inspirational for those artists who were there, who for many years were skilled in the art of copying, the souvenirs, the old folk stories, carvings, of course, contemporary carvings, a mask, because they were gearing it to the marketplace. And what the museum and other galleries, literally all starting around the same time, encouraged was the art of the individual. And that I'm really proud of, because you can see the difference now in Senegal.
Please give all these panelists a hand. I'm so inspired by all of you guys, and
What are you gonna play?
thank you for taking the time. And if y'all haven't had a chance to check out, Katrina's art or CCH's, I mean, if you haven't seen CCH, you just don't look at TV or film, or Delfeayo. Just check out these artists, because they are the best of what we got, and I really appreciate the time that y'all have taken. So thank you guys, and thank you audience for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a wonderful way to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the African Diaspora Consortium. Please join me in acknowledging ADC board member Jamaal Finkley, the amazing son and daughter of New Orleans, ADC senior advisor Katrina Andry and Delfeayo Marsalis, and the legendary CCH Pounder. Thank you all so much. Finally, ladies and gentlemen,